So there are some rumors, and perhaps it's even been established and I just haven't seen it, that Markelle Fultz is going to start over JJ Redick for the Sixers this season. And their lineup would be Fultz, Covington, Ben Simmons, Dario Saric, and Joel Embiid, as opposed to the lineup they had last year, which was one of the best five-man units in the NBA. And I think there could be some pushback on this from some people who could say, well, the lineup last year was so good, why would you mess with it? On top of, we don't know where Fultz's jump shot is, and him and Simmons together might not be a perfect fit, whereas JJ Redick is a great fit on this team and all that. There's a bit to get to, so why not talk about it? The first thing we gotta see is where Fultz's jumper is at, right? Because if he's making jump shots and he's confident and the defense is gonna respect him and all that, then everything's fine. And he made one corner three. He attempted a couple others. I don't think one game or however many games of preseason it's been is anywhere close enough to being comfortable with him from outside, but it's a start at least, right? I think what I would choose to do if I was Brett Brown is probably start the season with Redick, but play Fultz and Redick basically the same amount of minutes and put Fultz in there with the starting five, just because I feel like it kind of accomplishes everything you want, which is it gives Fultz confidence, which that definitely matters. It also gives you the time to still have that lineup that was so good for you last season, and it lets you see which one is better. And then you can make the adjustments, and then you figure by maybe the 30th or 40th game of the season, you can confidently take your pick of which one is the one to go with. Now, I think what's interesting with Fultz over Redick is I think the floor is higher with Redick out there just because there's so much spacing and there's only one non-shooter with Simmons. But the ceiling is higher with Fultz because then you've got his ability to go off the dribble with Simmons and Embiid's offensive games, and Covington and Saric are still damn good shooters, and Saric can go off the dribble a little bit as well, to where that would just be so difficult to defend as long as Fultz was just respectable enough from outside. Here's the thing though, I don't think Fultz needs to be pulling the defense out to the three-point line like crazy for that to still be good, because Ben Simmons is an anomaly. He's one of the few dudes who could maybe never learn how to shoot from outside like that, and it would still be fine, because who the hell is going to stay in front of that dude? Outside of a couple of dudes in the league. I mean, it would still be good for him to shoot from outside, but I'm saying I think where he is right now, he's good enough to where if he just develops a few more skills and gets a little craftier going to the rim, then he could probably still figure it out. And I think a similar thing could be said for Fultz. I mean, not as much because he's not nearly 7 feet tall like Ben Simmons is, but Fultz is a pretty big dude for his position at 6'4", and he has a good wingspan as well. I believe his wingspan is longer than you would expect for someone of his height. I should probably go look at it, but I remember something like that being a thing. And he's a hell of a ball handler. He's super crafty going to the rim. He's got floaters and all that. So I could picture Markelle Fultz being a better version of Tony Parker, where Tony, at parts of his career, pretty much never shot threes. And I think Fultz could be kind of similar. Now, even so, could that sometimes result in some awkward offense and maybe the spacing isn't the best? Yeah, but if there was ever going to be a tandem that could actually make it work, Ben Simmons and Markelle Fultz might be it. It also helps that Saric can shoot. Embiid, while his shooting isn't the best, I think it's good enough right now to expect a little bit more improvement out of him, to where he can pull out opposing big dudes. And then you still got Covington. And by the way, you can just shuffle in Redick and any other shooter they may pick up throughout the season. So I think there's enough there to where it can still be all right. And Brett Brown is always willing to get weird. So I wouldn't be shocked if he just threw out some weird lineup or decided to run some offense that's just kind of out there with a lot of movement and a lot of cuts and everything to where it all just kind of works out. Because you think of it like this, right? Markelle Fultz brings the ball up. Ben Simmons is on the wing. You could have Embiid chill from like 15 feet out. Saric is at the three-point line. Covington's out there. Ben Simmons cuts to the basket, right? Again, because the dude's a behemoth, I don't know who's going to actually stop him from getting to the rim on a cut. And then he's like 4 feet away from the rim, and the spacing's still pretty good, and you couldn't leave Fultz like totally wide open to cut off the pass because he's really good at attacking the rim himself. Like, you can make this stuff work, you know? And Brett Brown's smarter than me, and I thought of that in 5 seconds. So I do think there is still potential for it to go pretty well. The other thing we got to talk about is defensively. Because I said before, the wingspan of Fultz, which I actually am going to Google now. Because it's pretty good, on top of the size of the rest of those dudes, that could be some devastating defense. Yeah, Fultz's wingspan is 6'9", and he's only 6'4", so that's kind of like, he's kind of a freak show. So, between Covington, Saric, Embiid, Simmons, and then Fultz, whose arms are as long as a dude who should be way taller, you can do a lot with that defensively. There's some switch potential, a lot of good one-on-one defenders there, and then of course you have Embiid, who is a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. So, a lot of that stuff could work out. I guess the problem, and where this could still be seen as a risk, would be when Simmons has the ball and Fultz doesn't, because, you know, while Fultz can go off of a closeout and all that, he's not Ben Simmons. Like I said before, he's not nearly 7 feet tall, so there are times when you could put like a wing on him or something, and you might be able to slow him down going to the basket, and you might force him into some awkward mid-range jumpers, and that is when the three-pointer is going to have to be a little more crucial for Fultz. But even so, because of all the creative offense that I think Brett Brown's going to think of for these guys, on top of their ability to shuffle in shooting lineups, and if it's like a total disaster, then you just don't play Fultz and Simmons. Well, that's not really an option, never mind. But, you know, you can get creative enough. I think it can work out, and I do like the idea of starting Fultz over Redick eventually. But I do think if I was Brett Brown, day one, I would still go with the Redick lineup for all the reasons that I said in the first minute in this video, and then you see if the Fultz thing is going to work out. Because, I mean, it's going to have to work because these are your big three. Like, sure, Covington's good, and Saric is good, and Redick is good. The name of the game here is Fultz, Simmons, and Embiid, so it has to work. And if it doesn't, then that's a different conversation, but I think it will work, even if sometimes it'll be a little awkward. So yeah, that's my take on it.